Hey, my name is Rick Bisio. I am the author of The Educated Franchisee and a franchise coach. And this month, I want to talk a little bit about Jimmy Buffett. Um, Recently, we lost Jimmy Buffett. He's truly an American icon. He is the leader of the Parrot Heads and the mayor of that mythical paradise called Margaritaville. Truly a pretty amazing man. I think that all of us probably know a Jimmy Buffett song, and all of us probably know what Jimmy Buffett stood for as far as that escapism that goes along with the Jimmy Buffett world, right? A lot of people don't know the backstory behind Jimmy Buffett. So I wanted to share a little bit of that this month. I thought it might be appropriate. Born in 1946 in Mississippi, his family moved to Alabama. He was an altar boy at one point and decided he didn't want to be an altar boy. He wanted to be a musician. So he started a little band. Eventually, and they were playing acid rock, believe it or not, moved to New Orleans, tried his hand at that for a while, did okay, but really decided that country music was his forte. That's where he wanted to go. And so as far as the backstory, he then moves to Nashville, and he decides that he's going to become a country music star. And he bangs his head against that wall for a while, has very little success in the country music world, pays his bill by being a waiter and by being a music critic. So that would have been quite a story, right? To be in Nashville in the early 1970s and have Jimmy Buffett waiting your table. That would have been pretty cool. But nonetheless, it was not a successful experience for Jimmy Buffett. He ended up with a divorce and did what a lot of people do when you lose pretty much everything. He tried to get away from it all, and he got in his car and he went as far away as he could. And that was Key West. He drove until the road ended, basically. And he got to Key West and got a job on a fishing boat. And he began working on a fishing boat. And in the evenings, he'd go to the local bars and he'd play music. And he began studying his customer. And he said, why are my customers here? What are they really looking for? And what he began to realize is that his customers were really looking to escape their daily work. And so he started singing and writing songs that connected with these individuals who were in Key West to vacation, to escape, and to look for something better, right? And in 1977 was his first major hit, Margaritaville, which I think that if I was to play it right now, pretty much everybody listening to this would recognize the song. It is really the main song that kind of defines Margaritaville and this mythical paradise that he created. That was in 1977. Believe it or not, it was 37 years before he actually had his next major song, his #1 hit. 37 years of touring, 37 years on the road, 37 years of studying his customers, 37 years of curating his brand. And this is really interesting because he did. He curated his brand. He wanted his brand to mean something. He actually managed the amount of exposure. He didn't want to overexpose himself because he didn't want that brand to become everywhere. He wanted it to mean something very specific, and he wanted it to be for a very specific customer that he was looking for. Jimmy Buffett really was quite an amazing businessman, you know? So eventually in 2003, Alan Jackson puts together a song called It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere. And halfway through that song, he asks a question. He says, and what would Jimmy Buffett do? And then Jimmy Buffett comes into the song and talks a little bit about Margaritaville and a hurricane and sitting on the beach and how he would relax, right? And how he would escape. It became a #1 hit, 8 weeks as a #1 hit on the billboards. Jimmy Buffett ended up with a Country Music Award, Country Music Vocalist of the Year Award. Believe it or not, it was the first award that Jimmy Buffett had ever received from the music award, and it came from Nashville. It came from the country music scene, which was quite ironic. From that point, the Jimmy Buffett brand exploded. It exploded because he was ready. He knew who his customer. He had the brand. Now he had the platform, and he was able to grow from there. The Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville restaurants, his retail stores, his merchandising, his websites, even a movie. It all came down to this 37 years of work that he did, building that platform and skill set and connectivity and understanding of his customer. And at that point, when that door opened, he was able to walk through it and really create something pretty amazing. Um, so 60 Minutes did a 60-minute interview on Jimmy Buffett and asked him some questions. And one of the questions that they asked him, sorry, I probably should catch up here, is overnight success, Star is Born, his secret to success. They asked him, they said, tell me about your secrets to success. What is it that makes Jimmy Buffett successful? And it was a really interesting part of that conversation because Jimmy Buffett was pretty honest. He said, honestly, he says, I'm not the best musician out there. He says, I'm really not. He says, I'm much more of a businessman. He says, when it comes to like playing the guitar, he says, I wish I could play like Eric Clapton. He says, that'd be really cool if I could do that. He says, God, he says, he's just a genius. He says, I can't play like Eric Clapton and I never will be able to. When it came to vocals, he says, he says, I'm not the best singer. He says, there's so many singers in the world who are better than I am. He says, he actually said, he says, I'm still trying to take vocal lessons to become better. He says, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have any of those things. But what he had was this ability in regards to the business of music. And he was really good at that. He understood P&Ls, he understood cash flow, he understood his expenses, he understood his customer, he understood his brand. That's what he was really good at. So they said to him, what are the main secrets to success? And he gave out 3 things, which I think we can all use. The first one is you need a little bit of talent. Don't need a lot, obviously. I mean, as a singer, he didn't have a lot of talent, right? But he says you need a little bit of talent. You got to figure out what you're good at. Whatever that thing is that you're good at, he says, work on that talent. He says, get better at that, whether it's managing people or selling or understanding your customer or maybe, being a songwriter. Whatever it is that is your talent, he says, you have to have a little bit of talent and you need to work on that little bit of talent. That needs to be your base, your foundation. The next thing is you need a little bit of luck. He says, a lot of people work their whole life and don't get that door doesn't open for them. He says, but he says, with a little bit of luck, at a certain point in your life, a door will open, an opportunity will come to you, and you'll be able to take that foundational knowledge that you have developed, that little bit of talent that you have evolved, and you'll be able to walk through that door when that little bit of luck comes. You got to be able to recognize it. But when you recognize it and the door opens, you'll be prepared. You'll be able to walk through. The next thing he says, you need an ample service of work ethic. I think that was the exact quote, an ample service of work ethic. I thought that was a great way of putting it. He says, basically, I'm a workaholic. He says, I get up in the morning. He says, I love what I do. I work hard every day. He says, I've done it for most of my life. He says, people who sit on the beach with the sand between their toes and expect everything to come to them, he said, it doesn't work that way. He says, you've got to be willing to work hard. He says, that is the secrets to success, those 3 things. He also, at the very end, they were talking a little bit about his raving fans, these parrot heads. And he said something really interesting. He says, I go to these concerts, he says, and I'm up there singing the songs the same way I've done for 1,000 times. He says, and I see the most amazing things out there of what people are doing in the audience and how they're dressed and how they're acting. And he says, some of them, he says, I think that they must be totally off their rocker. He says, it's amazing what I see. He says, but I have a feeling that if I was to take those individuals and I was to follow them home that evening, what I would find is in the next morning, they would get up and they'd put on their pants and they'd go to work. He says, they love the escapism. He says, but I'll bet you that every one of those people would go to work in the morning just like I do. He says, I think that they're very much just like me. He said, so at this point, what I would just say is take a moment, drink a margarita, listen to a Jimmy Buffett song, do a little escape. It's a wonderful thing to do. Relaxes us, right? And when you're done with that, get back to work. You know why? Because that's what Jimmy Buffett would do.